said you can make nerd clusters at home, but my skepticism comes with melting the gummy bears. Would melting these together not just taste super weird? And patience isn't really my strong suit. So this came out piping hot and ended up being really sticky. Like once it was on my hands, I was done for. And each cluster I was trying to make ended up looking much bigger and droopier than the originals. I don't know which is messier, the nerds, the gummy bears, or just eating them outright. Not bad though. Apparently you can make cotton candy at home by using this tanghulu method, but I wasn't sure if I'd have the proper technique to pull this off. So instead I decided to try something a little easier. But this method was getting a little messy. And I tried to spin it, but for me, that wasn't too easy. And it felt like layers of glass. But I think I found a better way. What if we use something that already spins, like a frother? And this was already promising, tasted good too. Apparently you could take Jolly Ranchers and turn them into marshmallows. But I was a bit skeptical about this one, because overall, this was becoming a really sticky process. So when these finally melted, I needed to whip them up real good with gelatin. And oh gosh, was that a disaster. But I let this mix for 10 minutes and just stopped questioning my existence. Luckily, transferring to the dish was doable. Sorta. I let that sit overnight, and I was eager to see the results. To my surprise, these actually worked. Making Jolly Rancher tanghulu in the microwave to see if it actually works. The last time I tried this, it kind of failed. But I heard a lot about how I screwed up, so this time, I'm deferring to Nick's video. He usually steers me right and says to microwave these Jolly Ranchers. But these came out boiling in under 1 minute and didn't quite crack when I did the test. So I put them in again for about 30 seconds, and I kid you not, this cherry flavor got burnt a bit. Well, good thing we have a plan B. B as in blue. And this looks a lot better. Hear that crunch? And tastes good too. What if you can make sour gummies out of actual watermelon? My biggest concern here is how much water is in watermelon. This could be a hassle making it that gummy texture. So I'm putting in 4 packets of gelatin here. This time I'm freezing them before I pop them out of the molds. Because the last time I made something like this, it didn't go so well. And not gonna lie, this was hugely satisfying. Let these suckers sit overnight to dry out, and they still were jelly and not very gummy. But hey, they're not bad. I tried making honeycomb candy for the first time, but this did not go how I expected. At first, it was practically like making sugar for tanghulu, but when I put the baking soda in, I was super convinced this was gonna start overflowing. So I let it harden, and to break off the chunks, I dropped it, which was probably a little more aggressive than it needed to be. So I got out a knife and started stabbing it instead. Got whatever chunks I could, coated them in a nice thick chocolate, and this came out way better than what I was expecting. Pretty delicious. I tried making dragon's beard candy for the first time, but according to some people, this is the hardest thing someone can make. So let's give it a try. Dump all the ingredients into a pot, a little bit of food coloring, and boil until 260 Fahrenheit. Pop these into the molds, and this is where it starts to get difficult. You kind of had to pull a lot, but not too much. Here's my husband popping in, showing me up. Yep, I tried a couple more attempts, and surely enough, this was impossible. But I think it turned out alright for now. What if you could make tanghulu, but without the hot sugar? Well, according to this video, apparently you can. But does this method actually work? So I skewered up some fruit, froze these overnight, then brought out the ice water. And for a little fun, added a bit of food coloring. And when I dipped the frozen fruit, I was a bit skeptical, because the water isn't even flavored. But it actually solidified really well. It's frozen fruit. Apparently you can make icicle candy with only 3 ingredients. But I wasn't sure about this one, because this recipe calls for things to move really fast. It's all cooked in the microwave, which could be super dangerous or really effective. I just didn't want things to explode.
What the heck?
Fast coloring, fast flavoring, fast everything. Then I was more than a bit suspicious because the recipe says to literally touch and twist while still warm.
Damn it.
But I was blown away by how cool these look. What if we made dalgona, but in giant form? So I got my husband to make an umbrella shape out of wire, and then needed to melt a mountain of sugar, which started burning way too quick.
That's great.
So I tried this again, taking it a lot slower this time. There wasn't enough sugar.
No!
But I didn't give up just yet, even though most of my attempts were just a bubbly burnt mess.
It's hot!
I kept going, and I was not expecting this. Press that umbrella shape so quickly into it.
Yes!
This is the best thing I've ever made. I tried making cinnamon heart gummies, but the recipe I found online told me to add applesauce, which caused the gelatin sheet to not Jell-O right. So I decided to try this again, but keep the Jell-O and the cinnamon hearts. Leveled up the gelatin this time to make sure they actually solidify, and use a mold instead of a cookie cutter. And I froze them overnight, so they wouldn't get sticky. By the time they were done, I'd say this was a pretty good success. You guys told me that I made the viral wax candy all wrong. So this time I tried using beeswax to see if it would turn out better. And I gotta say, that does melt a lot easier. Another thing that I was told was that the jam was incorrect and that I needed to use oozing liquid. That's why I found this stuff that looks a little more indulgent, sealed them with another wax layer, and popped them in the freezer. So these did come out of the molds easier. Nice crack, but I don't think this is for me. I tried making this popular candy, but apparently the Jell-O and marshmallow layers are supposed to separate. Yeah, okay, we'll see about that. But after 24 hours, carefully I tried to dig off the edges and get it out of the mold. Well then, so I eventually got it to drop down, only to find out that it was the wrong side.
No.
And trying to peel the marshmallow side up off the cutting board was not easy, but luckily I finally got it to roll up. But slicing these was quite satisfying, and they turned out so beautiful. Taste good too. According to the internet, you can make shaky candies just like this. So of course I needed to try this, except I don't think I had the right ingredients here, because my shells came out a little puffy and flat. So I had an idea to use Jolly Ranchers instead, because they melt in the microwave really fast, and I can mold them into shape a little easier. So far, this was doing the trick, but they kind of just blooped out of the mold. So I got them filled up with some candy, shaky, shake, shake, and destroy! These were pretty fun. Apparently, people have been taking dragon's beard and putting it into chocolate. But considering how hard dragon's beard is to make, I was having some doubts on this one. Unlike last time, I was squeezing instead of pulling. But no matter what I did, the strings were just not happening. Oh my God, are you kidding me? So of course my husband pops in here and is able to do this with absolutely no problem whatsoever. How? I don't know. So maybe they're not perfect strands, but I'm gonna use them anyway. By this point, I just got this done and sealed.
Ah!
It definitely doesn't look as good as Patrick's does, but I'm gonna keep practicing. What if we could take Jolly Ranchers and turn them into something else? But I wasn't sure how to get the Jolly Ranchers small enough, maybe bang it with a hammer? Or I could just use a blender. That would be way easier. So I thought. But now that we got it down into a nice soft powder, it's time to mix it with some self-rising flour and ice cream. So I was wanting to bake this, but the batter didn't rise as much as I had hoped. It actually started deflating. So I tried to mask it with some icing, of course being impatient about that, but at least it tastes like a cherry Pop-Tart. What if you made tanghulu, but rather than dipping it in ice water, you dipped it into milk instead? And I know strawberry milk is a fan favorite, so I sprinkled a little of that on. So authentic. But I also decided to make a little matcha milk too. Oh yeah, I was supposed to put this matcha in warm milk. Well, if you spin it around like so, it gets the job done. They both have a nice matte coat versus the water, which was shiny. And they taste pretty good. I tried making the viral candy cranberries because I wanted to see if this was as good as the internet says. So I needed to soak these overnight, and my goal was to get these super marinated. Oh yeah, soda does that. Okay, so don't shake this. But the next day, I was eager to get these drained and frosted. Except the powdered sugar was really messy. So I got these in the oven, and I was super excited because they actually had that satisfying crack sound. This is a good one. What if we turned gummy worms into popsicles? But of course this project was cursed, because when I microwaved these, it created a sticky, sugary disaster.
This is the part I'm dreading.
Not to mention I had to pour 2 at a time, so they wouldn't overlap, which kinda worked. Froze them overnight, and the moment of truth.
Uh-oh.
I should have used cooking spray or something. But with a little more tugging, I managed to get them out of the mold.
Ooh.
Not bad for a worm on a stick. Did you know that you can make holographic chocolate? Supposedly, all you need is a special mold that will reflect light in all directions. But when I melted down chocolate, they came out dull and full of patches.
What? You've got to be kidding me.
So I tried again, but with this holographic sheet instead. But figuring out which side was the right side was kind of a nightmare.
That did not work.
Which led me to plan C. Forget this, we're making Jolly Ranchers instead. And shockingly, that worked. Not what I expected, but I'll take it. What if you could make blown glass but edible? Because I found this one ingredient that heats just like sugar. Except what they don't tell you is this stuff is so incredibly hot.
It's bleeding inside my fingers.
And as I was starting to get it, it cracked. So I remelted it and tried again. Nope. No matter what I did,
almost.
At this point, I was so frustrated that I just asked my husband if he could help. And of course, he has a lot more patience than I do, so he was able to get it on the first try.
Can I just pretend that I did it?
At least it finally worked, and this is really cool. Apparently, the last time I made angel hair chocolate, I completely misunderstood the assignment. This time, I tried it a little different. So I had to get in that edible glitter to make it look all fancy, and then immediately ruin it with my amateur level chocolate smear.
Ugh, my stuff can never look aesthetically pleasing.
So for that authentic texture, I just bought cotton candy from the store, but I didn't want it to get too fluffy.
I'm like adding too much.
Don't add too much then.
Well, but I want to add too much.
At this point, every part of this process was getting unsuccessful. But this still looks way better than my last attempt. What if we made tanghulu, but using candy instead of fruit? Apparently, it's called liquid tanghulu, and it's supposed to be as simple as adding a sugar coating to gummy candy. But I wasn't even sure what kind of candy this would work with. Some gummies were soft, and others were a bit tougher and harder to skewer. But I warmed up some sugar and got to dip in. See, this is what I'm saying. Some of them just melt right off, but others managed to survive the heat just fine, and even the ice bath. But the true test is, did this work? Holy cow, this is impressive. What if we turned Jolly Ranchers into another type of candy? So I took some Tootsie Rolls, started molding them on sticks, and basically tanghulu'd it into Jolly Rancher slime. At first, I was really excited about the results, until I started noticing that the stick was poking through the top. So I thought, why not give it another coat and an ice bath to stop the heat? Except, I guess they didn't get hard enough because then the edges started going flat.
No!
And of course, it was still poking through. So I tried one more layer to get it solid again. Now this is what I'm talking about. Can we turn popsicles into something even better? Because I'm big on flavor, but disappointed with the color. Why does it always look better on the box?
What the?
What felt especially wrong was how not white this white is.
What do I do?
Then I figured, why not just use white popsicles that already exist? So finally it was time to mix in the gelatin. Did I heat this first? No, I did not. But despite the whole chaos of this, once I got these piped into the mold and then out again, they actually turned out pretty cute and delicious. I wanted to turn Jolly Ranchers into cotton candy, but is it possible using a cotton candy machine? So I decided to blend the Jolly Ranchers up into a fine powder.
That was so loud.
The idea was to feed the sugar into a cotton candy machine, hoping it won't break the machine.
Okay, I don't like this anymore.
So far it was kind of working, but also flung sugar everywhere. But when I tried again, the cotton candy wouldn't stop sticking to itself. Luckily, I was starting to get the hang of it. These turned out real nice and fluffy. Way worth it. You guys have been asking me to make this treat, so I decided to try it using Jolly Ranchers. And once it started melting, it went fast. The last time I was struggling with the cookie being sticky, so this time I tried to use parchment paper, except it was starting to peel up. Luckily though, it was kind of like ripping off a sticker. Of course I had to punch an umbrella in there,
Wait.
but I'd definitely be jibbing over a player if I handed them this. Okay, some of these worked out. Well then, and tasted like a freeze-dry airhead. What if you could turn Jolly Ranchers into Dragon's Beard candy? But my only concern is once they cool down, they harden like glass. Okay, not gonna work. So I tried again, this time with some corn syrup mixed in, hoping to make the candy more malleable. And this was starting to come together. But then I remembered I'm really bad at Dragon's Beard.
See, this is my problem. I always get thin strands. I don't know why.
So I got my husband to do a bit of it. And since Jolly Ranchers are ultimately stringy, the texture was pretty spot on. It tasted amazing too. What if we could make tanghulu, but in a different way? Well, I tried mixing cocoa powder with sugar, but I was a bit skeptical. Mainly because this looked like it was about to overflow.
I don't know what to do.
And it started smelling burnt. When I went to dip in the fruit, it was all molasses-like and thick. And it crystallized so fast, I wasn't even able to get seconds. So I tried again, making sure to only use a tablespoon of cocoa powder this time. And while I did get the fruit coated, it was still kind of thick. I think the original is definitely better. I tried making edible crystals for the first time, and I actually had a pretty good feeling about this one. But I was worried that these were gonna harden instead of gel. So I decided to test out different batches with different cook times. And if there's one thing that this recipe is testing,
Oh no!
it's my patience. Because not only do they have to sit in the fridge for 24 hours, but they also had to sit on the counter for 5 days to dry out. 5 days go by and each of these are hard as a rock. I guess I'll have to try again. Is it possible to make edible crystals that aren't a disaster? Because the last time, these weren't great. So this time, I came back with a new recipe and a whole lot of sugar.
Get away, sugar bubbles.
And it was supposed to turn out clear, but nope.
Why is it coming out yellow?
So I drowned it in food coloring, maybe a little too much, and I left it overnight to gellify. Then started carving them into gems. But this process was tedious. Then came the real challenge, waiting 5 days for these to harden. This was actually crunchy on the outside and deliciously soft on the inside.